Boom. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to another edition of the Brothers of Legacy. Let's see. It's kind of funky. Not hearing. All right. I appreciate you guys rocking with us and hanging with us. I pray all is well. All is good in the hood. Um, let's see. Boom, boom. Who was that? Blessings, Lisa. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing and always rocking with us. Um, and I appreciate you. Let's see, because you could have been anywhere, but you're rocking with us. Make sure you join our community. Text brothers to 84576. Join our community to brothers 845. Text brothers to 84576. Um, Today, I know this is kind of maybe a sticky issue, but we're gonna tackle it and talk about it. And because there's much to share and different perspectives. Um, and each story is never the same, never the same. Each perspective is not the same. So you'll be surprised at what's going to be shared today. Um, but all my podcast people, I appreciate you guys rocking and listening and rating and reviewing on our on podcast platforms. And make sure you connect with us. And I want you guys to join our community as well. Text brothers to 84576. Text brothers to 84576. And be a part of these conversations. I would like my podcast people to be here live, just so you've been rocking with us for a while. Just hearing our voice, you get an opportunity to see us and see the craziness up close, personal, live on the screen, of course. But definitely an opportunity to be a part of this platform. But as well as everyone else, I appreciate you guys rocking. My replay viewers, thank you for hanging and rocking with us. Um, we appreciate you guys watching. All my live people always watching and here. We are growing in numbers. We are growing leaps and bounds. The one thing I do want to say is we're going through a shift. Well, not really a shift, but more or less, we're going to be getting laser focused. Cynthia Amazing. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for rocking with us. Um, so let's see. Ah, man, I'll be trying to block some folks on another platform. When you start somewhere, Twitch is like Periscope. It's kind of a bunch of folks that you got to block and block and block. I don't know. I wonder if I could turn comments off, but it's not the same. If you can't comment, you don't hang. Because that's how it was in Periscope. If I couldn't comment, it's not as much fun. It's not a conversation. So yeah, definitely appreciate you guys. Make sure you share, tag somebody to be in this conversation, so they can share in our experience as well as they can share their own. As much as they can type, as fast as they can type. Because we do want as many perspectives as possible, because it's this is a reality. And like I said, some people's realities were harder than others. Um, and life through the lens as someone black can be different at a lot of times, a lot of points in your life. So I kind of want to dig into that today. It may be just me today, but we're gonna get in on this conversation. So like I said, make sure you share. Sharing is caring. Share to all the groups. Spam them, and tag until they put you in Facebook jail. Put a couple of names up. Definitely get them in this space, in this conversation. And because I'm sure, like I said, people have side conversations, and I know you probably talked to someone about that or about this particular topic. And it's definitely something you want to be a part of. So like I said, do that. And if you're first time here, definitely join our community. Text brothers to 84576. Text brothers to 84576. Be a part of this shift. Be a part of this change. We have some things coming down the pike, some virtual stuff, some stuff I'm really geeked about, but I'm working on. I don't want to talk too much or I want to reveal it yet because I want to make sure I got it in order, for it to be the most effective. And what else? What else? What else? So I appreciate you guys. So listen, like I said, tag, share this your opportunity. All right, we're gonna get into this conversation. And I should be ready by now. All right, I'll be right back. I didn't want to catch
Good
that.
morning. Good morning.
Good
Good morning. Good morning.
Welcome to another edition of
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. What's up, everybody?
Start acting up. Don't start acting up, computer. All right, we is back on the scene, crispy and clean. All right. Oh, so I guess it's gonna be just me. All right, y'all gonna rock with me today. So today we're gonna talk about what I have learned while growing up black. And I've mentioned before, I come from a town, Roosevelt, Long Island. You may have heard of it. I know Eddie Murphy grew up there. Howard Stern grew up there. Um, so it's an interesting place. Well, interesting for me. But you know, like I've always said, I grew up all black, and when I grew up there, it was I would venture to say it's 1 square mile, and it's a 90, probably 95% black. There were at the time in the 90s, there were some whites, there were some very small amount of whites, probably kind of and how many I interacted with. There were very few Hispanics at the time, so it was very black. So that was my lens. So at least growing up to like teenage, I didn't really deal with those kind of issues. Police knew, and it was a time where the cops knew who was who, so we never had the police issues and things of that nature. So we were really kind of in a bubble in a sense, being from Roosevelt. Now, understand one thing about New York, and my New Yorkers will not dispute this. New York is very uh, segregated. Good morning, Kathy. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, V. Great morning to you guys. Thanks for rocking with us. New York is very segregated. So there are areas that you go in, I wouldn't say there's sundown places, but you don't want to be just hanging out all willy nilly without any purpose. Um, because you could have issues with cops, even the people there. Let me get my pastor in the building. Great morning to you, sir. Um, so hey, what's up, Cole? Good morning. Good morning. Um, so my experience, like I said, I never really, at least growing up into teenage years, never dealt with racial issues in my face. Um, not that I can remember, not that I know of, not saying it didn't, just didn't pay attention to it. And like I said, in my town, growing up black, um, you know, we had black cops. I mean, even the history of black neighborhoods and black cops aren't always the best as well. But we never had those kind of issues. Never had the boys in the hood kind of issues. What up, Dwayne? Great morning to you,
What
sir.
up? What up?
Um, so for me, growing up black, at least into teenage years, was pretty much, straightforward. Like most of what I seen was like TV stuff, the Rodney King things. And wow, this is really still happening kind of situation. Um, not, yeah, like I said, I personally never seen nor experienced it. Um, you know, the, the most of any information as far as racial issues probably came from my dad, because he came from the South. He was born in Tennessee. So, of course, he had tons of stories. And he wasn't the biggest fan of white people. But in the end, before he died, he had one of his best friends was a neighbor across the street who was white. So it's kind of a funny thing, for that. And they had lived there forever, but once he retired, once you retired, you got more time to know what's going on around in your neighborhood, and you know, so it was that's just an interesting side story on that one. But for
Can I
me,
ask
like
you
I
a
said,
crazy question before you move forward?
yeah,
Was that due to the Kingdom Hall, their friendship?
who my dad?
Your dad and the white
Oh,
neighbor.
okay. So if I've never explained, so my mom was Jehovah's Witness.
But dad wasn't.
Dad was anti Jehovah's Witness. So
Okay.
understand, not that he just didn't go, not
Yeah,
that he
well,
didn't care. He didn't like him. See,
wow.
if I've
That's a
never shared, like
dynamic.
every Wednesday, my mom was trying to go to Jehovah's Witness. He would give her a hard time. And he would swear as all white people that he want to see the monkeys. So and and
Wow.
that was like it was like almost a traditional weekly thing. Like she'd be trying to like he'd be napping on the couch. You hear her trying to kind of creep out. And
Wow.
right before she hit that door, he would start. So yeah, it was he didn't like him at all. At all.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah, but no. So yeah, they were both gardeners. They had a lot of stuff in common, like
Mhm.
the neighbor would just grow such, great vegetables. They would share, So yeah, they had a great relationship up until his
Cool.
passing.
Cool.
So yeah, that was pretty much my beginning. What about you guys as far as growing up, at least teenager before getting out on your own? What was it like growing up black in your area, your town, your spaces?
I think Pastor's probably gonna have the most significant story. Maybe I don't know, but for me, it was. I want to say I was sheltered, if that makes sense. And I know people.
Right.
I grew up in South Carolina,
Okay.
and the first time I was called the N word, and somebody really meant it, it was a New Yorker that did it. So,
Wow.
as far as South Carolina goes, being from the South and the place where most slaves came into the country,
Right.
I knew the historical significance,
Right.
and that was constant. I mean, the roads, the schools, a lot of Afrocentric behavior because of where we were.
Right.
But as far as like seeing a major difference,
Right. What's up, Jimmy?
my generation at least,
Yeah.
we were cool. Like it was like 40% black, like 40% white, and like 15% Native American. So we were all cool. There were moments when people would let you know that, hey, you black and I'm white. It was like, yeah, you can't you can't
Right.
come play over here. My
Right.
mom and dad won't like it. But the
Wow.
older we got, the less valid that was, because they started being like, yeah, whatever. So yeah, I didn't experience a lot of racism, but I knew people who were in the Klan. And it was always messed up because I didn't know how to take it. Like there was this, I'm gonna call his name. I don't care. His name was Bill Coward. And Bill Coward owned probably 15-20% of the properties in a certain neighborhood. And he was a Klan member, but he also owned the ice cream parlor, the fireworks store, and he was kind of like a community pillar. But he also used to sleep with black women for rent money when they couldn't pay it. So I was like, I learned early that hate sometimes was more political than it was who I'll deal with,
Okay.
because I saw these same people that we all knew in their heart didn't like black people or thought they were better,
Right.
but they still had relationships with black people. It was just
Okay.
like, okay, it was like, if what the way we see racism,
Right.
the reality for us was it was a classism thing.
Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah, but music, yeah, you got the consciousness from music.
Right.
I saw it, I knew it, but it really wasn't a burden. It didn't stop. It didn't stop the way we live life.
Gotcha.
It's almost
Okay.
normal.
Gotcha.
I feel it's
Oh,
worse now than it was then for me. I know that's a crazy
wow.
thing to say, but I feel
Right.
today it's
You
more
just
blatant and worse than it was in my location. Maybe it was just because I was sheltered a little.
right. Interesting. Pastor.
I didn't really see it growing up.
Okay.
Um, it may have popped up here and there, but I didn't see it. We grew up in a real diverse in Kankakee, Illinois. It was very diverse.
Right.
Now, going to school, I started out in public school, ended up in private school, then back to public school.
Right.
So my middle years were in private school. I went to a Catholic school, and I was the only black boy in my class.
Oh
Mm.
wow.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I had to reflect back years after to realize I was the only black boy in my class. Because in the
Okay.
experience, it never
didn't-
dawned on me.
Right. Right. They didn't treat you. You didn't felt treated
Right,
like.
because me and my classmates, you
Right.
like who you like, you don't like who you don't like,
Right.
Um,
Right.
but color was not. But you got to realize this: the Southern experience would be different. Remember that when when slaves wanted to get away, they ran north,
Right.
right? Because there was more assimilation in the north
Hmm.
Okay.
than there was in
Right.
the south.
Right.
You also have to remember that racism existed. You were just blind to it.
Right. There's no doubt about
Because
it.
right, because the truth is people knew their place. There was a
Right.
season where people just knew their place. And you knew what to do, you knew what not to do. You just didn't want to cause any issues. Right. And so you saw it in areas where there was a larger quantity of black people.
Right.
There were sections of America where there were we were more heavily populated in certain areas. So they were more bold.
Right. Right.
Right.
Right. Right. I
That's
got
the thing. And so for those of us who don't recall going through anything like that, it's because, there weren't enough of us to really have a voice. When I, growing up for me, yeah, we were surrounded by white people, but we were surrounded by everything. We had everything. And to Dwayne's point, it was more classism than anything. Where I come from, if you lived in my zip code, I don't care what color you were, you didn't have a whole lot. Not if you're in my zip code.
We all in the struggle together.
Yeah, right. I mean, you may have more money than me, but
Right.
you don't have enough money to get out of here.
Right.
Right. You might can miss grits for one morning, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, like you go out for entertainment. I'm going to see you. We're going to go to the same places.
I got you.
So it wasn't really a thing. And I'm like Dwayne. I didn't hear the N word blatantly,
Right.
in a bitter and hatred fashion. It was in Illinois, but it was 10 years after I graduated high school.
Wow.
Somebody shouted it out driving by me in a car. I was in Champaign, Illinois, and they shouted
Wow.
out the window of the car. I'm like, yeah, you said it driving by.
Wow, that's my same experience, except I was 17 and it was a car with New York plates.
Wow.
But you said something that was interesting that I just thought about.
Right.
I think one of the reasons why I didn't experience it so much is because we were kids, and yeah, parents teach a certain thing, but kids are kids. They're still learning, they're still forming their opinions about stuff. So you could tell by the children what the parents were like at home, because we had people who would drop the N word when I was in 3rd, 4th grade. When we playing football on the yard and they get hit hard, it was like, you ninja, and then run. So it wasn't a hateful, I'm a mess you up. It was I'm scared you hit me hard, but I'm a run. So it was different. And the older you got, when those type things start being said and heard, I think we started reflecting a little bit differently, because now I know you mean it. Now I know this isn't just something you were taught. It's something you were taught, and now you embrace it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think I don't think I've been ever hollered or had a drive-by that I remember. I'm like, other than, of course, my own calling each other that. But outside of that, no, I don't recall it. I may after the Brooklyn, like, oh, you know what? I remember now. But I just
You
don't.
say you was in Brooklyn.
Right, right. I don't recall it. Yeah, and I think even growing and like I said, like growing up, yeah, isolated. You kind of isolated. You don't really see it. It's not in your face as much. And when I grew up, um, I think my experience when I started working, unfortunately, I was one of those dudes that kind of, I guess, growing up so black that, you know, when you start working, of course, it's a diversity. I worked at a Kmart. So it was, that chip on your shoulder. I wish you would. I wish you would call me, kind of thing,
Yeah.
when there was an issue or whatever. And that took a while just to like, you need to chill out. Everybody ain't. Like some people are doodle birds, but they're not racist. Like
Right.
trying to like some people are just idiots. They're just bad managers, but they're not racist. Like unless that's not my approach was like trying not to look at it all. Have that chip on your shoulder, have that anger. I don't know. Like it seemed, and I think it's from the music and watching certain things and getting in your head and you thinking, if you're not connected to enough white people, there's this special ones. It's kind of like, white people do with blacks. Oh no, you're a different black.
Facts.
My experience is like, oh no, they're a good white. All the rest of them, I got my eye on. So it was trying to let right. V said the wish factor, right? I wish he would. I think it was me trying to let my guard down a little bit, just trying not to be so like, I'm waiting for him to say something crazy, trying to build relationships without having the chip on your shoulder. And that was my experience, going out into the working world. I mean, there was some moments you just like, I don't know, I feel like you treat me a little different, like I don't see it like, me and white guy over here, you kind of coming at us in two different ways, like it was, I had moments like that at work. And it's just like, okay, you see certain things. And I remember one time I was leaving work and one of the security guys stopped me and he checked my bag before I left and he ain't checked nobody else. I didn't pay attention to it. I got in the car. My dad was like,
he said you look like you steal. That's what
right. My dad who was sitting there waiting was like, yo, I saw him look in your bag. I didn't see him check anybody else. It was moments like that. I was like, oh, I didn't think anything of it, because I was trying to, not look at everything. But my dad, and it was true though. I was like, you're right, because it was like it was probably like 20%, 15% black, and the rest were white. At the Kmart. So yeah, it was some interesting things as far as coming into that stuff being revealed, and for me being in a bubble. And I've had like small run-ins with police.
Define bubble.
And so I'll say defining my bubble would mean I never seen racism in my face. I never had to deal with it. I never, I don't think so. Anyway, I'll say it that way based on my perception and my perspective at the time. And my life, based on what you see on TV, the Rodney King, to being harassed by the police and things of that nature never came up. So being in that mind space and being in that kind of bubble, I used to think, and even with people that used to get arrested that, like the falsely accused, like they said they had nothing to do with, like we know all those stories now. I used to feel like they had to have something to do with it. The police wouldn't just arrest you, like throw you in jail for 20 years with nothing. You had to be involved. Like, and this was my mindset.
Innocent people don't go to prison.
Right. Yo, I mean, like I was hardcore. My dad was conservative, Rush Limbaugh watching. So my mindset was like,
your dad was a Rush Limbaugh fan back then?
Yeah. And I will say,
you said,
defense.
Wait.
Oh Lord.
Wait.
Yes. Pastor just said it all makes sense.
Your
dad was a Rush Limbaugh fan?
Yes, and yes, he was black. He looked at me and him look the same. I should pull his. I got his picture up over there.
Wow. I mean, it's interesting. But you're
Yeah.
talking about Rush Limbaugh in the 70s.
This is like 80s. This is 80s, early 90s. This is as far. So it stops there. So that's I want perspective. You know, I don't think he was as fringe because he was even on TV. He had a show for a while, TV show.
Yeah, I mean, but he was always a conservative. You're talking about the pre-Trump Rush Limbaugh.
Right.
But even he was. I don't even see him as a Trump fan. He was well. Anyway, I'm.
Right. I know. But yeah, so so he was conservative. He always told me, he said, I don't care how you feel, you're always gonna be a conservative. You know, so like these values were always kind of pushed in me, and I always felt like, you know, you chose to be on welfare. You chose, you know, like it was like I was really in this bubble.
And that's what people struggle with me. I'm conservative in that way.
Right.
I am absolutely capitalist.
Right.
I believe that you can make it if you want to make it. I said anybody that's not working doesn't want to. That's my belief, because you can get out there and cut grass. What you're saying is you don't have the job you want.
Right.
It's not that you can't work. You just can't. Right. You're just unable to get the job that you want.
Right.
But anybody that wants to work is working. Right. I tell people that, you know, if you're unemployed, looking for a job is your job.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Definitely.
I mean, that's just real. And so I try to erase all those excuses from people to say, I just can't find a job. But well, your job is to find a job. Right. Get up, clock in, go hit them streets, go do whatever you have to do until you can get paid. That's just and so in that regard, I'm a conservative. I believe that you can make it. I do believe,
and I'm glad you say that the way you said it, because I think the first time you said that, there may be people who heard that and didn't hear what you said, because you said the reality is you don't have the job you want. And because where I grew up, I think most black people are conservative, and then at least in the South where I was from, because I didn't know lazy black men growing up. Right. I don't care if you was the wino, you were still raking yards, cutting grass, doing handyman work on somebody's roof, picking up cans, taking them to the recycling center. I didn't see lazy black men growing up. But what I did see is a lot of black men who, when you have conversation with them, it was like, man, these dudes are smart. Why they cutting grass for a living? Right. I'm gleaning a lot from them. But I think for me, the rub or the difference is, I think when you take the totality of circumstances, for me it was kind of simple. I grew up believing that, but also believing that the system wasn't at us anymore. I believe that when I was a 13-year-old, I believed that we had already achieved Martin Luther King's dream. I didn't understand it yet, because I looked around me and I was like, the white people around me,
kumbaya,
we cool. I mean, now I can look at certain people and see traits that I'm like, look, that ain't what you spoke. You ain't the person I knew growing up.
But see, the thing is, you weren't at your age then. You weren't supposed to see it.
Right.
That's the thing, and so your parents are supposed to educate you for the world that you're stepping into.
Right.
You know, but what I realize in our community, for the most part, our parents spent more time having to work to survive. Absolutely. And less time being able to really groom you. You had to do what I said. I grew up in a world where you just do what I tell you to do, and that's it.
Right.
You understand? Now it's unique in our house. Like my mom, my mom she let us kind of express ourselves. We were free to kind of do, what we wanted to do. You understand? Yeah. But we also remembered the instructions. The house better be clean when I get home. Right. Make sure your brothers eat. Right. Don't break my house. And and I'm saying it's simple things like that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because she tried to shield us from the world, but there were things that I think that I look back on right?
Right.
When it comes to survival, I realized like we lived in a man's world. I grew up in a man's world, but I was raised by a single mother
Right.
who knew at that time she was living in a man's world.
Right.
And so to protect herself, I think back on things like whenever my mom I realized my mom didn't wear dresses,
Right.
but she was dainty. She was a lady, but you didn't catch her in dresses. Like she had sundresses if she wanted to go out on a date and all this kind of, it was a mindset that she had that like, it would not be a surprise to see my mother with, blue jeans,
Right. Right.
low boots and a fatigue coat, with her hair in an afro or what, she was conscious,
Right.
but she was conscious and protective of her boys.
Right.
That's what it was for her, And so whenever, like, if she had to come to the school to deal with anything, she didn't come dressed like a lady. She came dressed for battle.
Right.
See, and that's a huge difference, Pastor. Like everything you said up into the fatigue coat, and then the way your mom dealt with stuff. Everything up until that was my mom, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But going back to what you said in the South, it was classism and placism. When my mom, when stuff happened at school, my mom 9 times out of 10 was already, boy, I'm gonna whoop you, got me coming to the school. It didn't matter whether I was right, wrong, or different. It was like, here I am, a black woman coming to the school talking to the white man, and it's because of you.
Right.
So it was that know your place type mentality. To this day, love my mama to death, one of the strongest people I know, but she was conditioned. Like, I remember the first time I was able to take my mom to a nice restaurant in the neighboring city, which our city was 7,800 people. There was Florence, South Carolina was probably about 50 minutes away. Right. And it was about 70,000 people. Right. And they had a couple restaurants that were known, right?
Right.
So when I joined the Army and I was able to finally like take my mom out, buy her a nice outfit to go and get a good table, that's the first thing I wanted to do. So when I came home on leave, took my mom and a couple of my nieces to this restaurant, and they brought my mom something she didn't order. And I was like, excuse me, ma'am. I was like, my mom didn't order this. Can you, and I was nice about it.
Right.
Later, she was like, okay, I'm sorry. She picks the food up and she takes it back. And my mom looked, she then looks over me. She was like, boy, you better stop talking to them people like that.
Wow. And
I was like, look, Mom, I ain't being disrespectful, but I was like, at this point, she worked for me. Right. And my mom, it was hard for her to grasp that because of the way she grew up. Now, I said all that, but I'm gonna say this. She tells me a story about the 50s in South Carolina. There was this white boy who lived on a farm, probably maybe a half mile away from theirs.
Right.
And he had this thing for my mom and her sisters. He just
right.
So she busted his kid head one time because he grabbed her sister's butt.
Right.
His name was Tater Bread. I don't know why they called him Tater Bread, but his name was Tater Bread. And I was like, you did what? Because in my mind, a black woman doing that to a white man in the 50s, you did.
Right.
And she was like, no. She was like, I knew him. She was like, we grew up together. She was like, we played together. His daddy was always somewhere else, and his mom didn't do anything. Right. My mom cleaned the house for him, so she didn't have any influence really.
Wow.
So she knew where she could fit in and do certain things, but everything else, she just no, we don't do that. She told my first wife, she was like, baby, you really smart. She was like, you probably could be a manager at a store or something, huh?
Right.
And to her, that wasn't an insult.
Wow.
Because of how we grew up and where we grew up.
Wow. But that's what I think. I think that's different, coming up in the South.
Right.
My mom was born in Philly, but spent a lot of her childhood, between Mississippi and Memphis. I was born in Memphis. Oh, so my mother had a taste. She knew the experience.
Right.
From being in Mississippi, because I have roots in Mississippi. I got folks in Tennessee. I got folks in California, Philadelphia. And so she had this history, even though it wasn't in our face.
Right.
In Illinois growing up, she knew it when she saw it.
Right.
Because she had those experiences.
Right.
She didn't have, so for her, it was in her face, but it was never in our face.
Right. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And again, it's all about placement, demographics, and all that plays a role. She would, my mom, when you talk about how to conduct yourself, my mother never told us. She always told us to act like you got some sense, but that had nothing to do with our skin color. It had everything to do with the fact that you're my son and you're not going to act a fool.
Right.
That's what it was about. I'm not raising fools. I don't want you to walk around here acting like you don't have, like you weren't trained better.
Right.
Open the door for ladies, say, excuse me, man. She always taught us manners and things like that. Right. But it wasn't like so that you don't get in trouble. It was like, I don't want you to look like an idiot.
Right.
That's that's always what it was. It was never a conversation about color.
Gotcha.
When I look back, I realized people knew just off of how she carried herself to leave her alone. Right. A lot of those conversations didn't have to be had just because of how she carried herself. And so I learned to carry myself that way. And I think that I avoided a lot of stuff simply by how I carried myself. Right. Yeah. And it wasn't like, I don't want to get in trouble. I'm like, she taught me to look people in the eye when you're talking to them and all that kind of stuff, and so that to me, predators know weakness.
Absolutely. They sense.
You understand? And racism is predatory.
I got you. Right.
So you're going to be a victim if you look like a victim.
Right. Right.
But you can trust and believe they can walk into certain places and know I won't mess with that one.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And because I never, it's like I think back in my life and I'm like, I remember having some experiences where people tried me, but man, it had to be really brazen. You had to really be crazy because the people that were kind of I just didn't get that growing up. I didn't get that even in my young adult life. I didn't get it.
So would you say, because I'm trying to see kind of the perspective you're coming from, because I'll say for myself, my mannerisms and dressing was like, I've always kept it in a certain way where I wouldn't be a target. And, the way you dress, the way you carry yourself, like to for lack of a better word, to not look like one of them, like look like the usual, maybe a usual suspect, like just the way you.
But no, because for me, that was never how I was taught. Right. It was, I want you to be a gentleman. I want you to be a man. Right. I want you to stand for what you believe in. All of those things. I want you to look at people in the face. When you open your mouth, have something to say, or don't open your mouth.
I got you. Not being timid. Not being timid towards white people or things like that. But I get what you're saying. Not a racial thing, but a man thing. I guess.
Yeah, because he never told us. I was never taught how to act around white people. I was just taught how to act. Period.
Right. Yeah. Myself as well. I mean, it was never like two different.
And that was the thing. I don't want to look like.
It was never like I don't want to look like somebody that they could. It was never that. It was always be proud of who you are.
Right.
You carry my name.
Right.
Don't mess up my name. That's what it was always about. Right. Because it was never like I didn't grow up in a house where we had conversations about white people.
Right. Right.
And it was the same for us. And where I was from in the South, which is not too far from where Terry and V from, it was the same way. But there was still overtones. They were still overtones of things that you just knew, like craziness. Anybody from my hometown, I always tell that when they don't know me and I come home to visit, where you from? Right here. You don't sound like you from here.
Right.
Yeah.
And I get told I sound white all the time, but I know I'm country. Right. I just know how to speak grammatically correct English, but it was a thing. And but at the time where I was from, blacks were just as dominating. They just had less. Like we had neighborhoods that were black neyborhoods. We had neighborhoods that was like that whole wrong side of the track thing that didn't apply to us, so to speak. However, it it wasn't separated by a track, by the train track.
Right.
It was separated by school zones almost.
Right.
It was like if you go down this road, everybody over here. I remember when I first moved back to South Carolina, as an adult, I took a job at Fort Bragg and moved back to South Carolina, and I didn't. There were certain places I just wasn't going to take my family, right? So I bought a house in a good neighborhood. You know what all of my family said when they came over? Boy, you live over here in the white people section.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and that's literally a thing.
Right.
Now those lines are starting to be blurred now.
Right.
But that's literally a thing where I grew up.
But we had that. I mean, you know, for us in Kankakee, you know, we had the north side. The north side was where, you know, it was predominantly black. You know, but we didn't call it black. We called it the dirty side.
Right. Let's keep it real.
You know, because, you know, the people didn't cut grass. They had, you know, dirt yards. You know, there was no grass growing. You know, just the dirt ran over onto the sidewalk. You know, there was never, you know, there was no curb appeal over there. Folks didn't take care of the property and all of that. You know, where we lived, it was a diverse neighborhood. You had white, black, Latino, even some Asians. You know, we had apartment comp. I had an apartment building, you know, outside my house, down the street, across the street on the left side. I had an apartment building outside my house, down the street, and across the street on the right side. Right. But there was a mixing pot of everything. Right. But if you go over to the north side, like, we didn't go to the north side because we knew that if we went to the north side, we was going to have to fight.
Right.
People that look like us.
Yeah, right.
You know, I'll never forget. I never knew. It's funny. I went to school and all of that, and I didn't know the word kin, K-I-N. I never heard. The first time I ever heard that word was on the north side. Somebody said, "You ain't a kin to him?" I'm like, "What?" That's your cousin. That's your brother. Oh, you mean, are we related? Are we related? I mean, me and my brother would look at each other like, "What is kin? What does that mean? What is kin? What is that?"
And I learned that too.
Yeah. So and that's what happened with us. You know, we didn't speak like we came from the north side.
Right. Yes. Yep.
You know. Yep. And I was told, you know, you talk like white people and all that kind of stuff. But I'm like, you mean because I speak proper English?
Hey, look, you do bring up an interesting point with the linguistics, though. Right. Because I promise you, I've used words my whole life that other people, when I joined the military, people were like, huh? What'd you say?
Yeah, the South was a whole different language.
Yeah. I was like, for instance, but it don't sound like what it actually is, but it makes sense. Right. Like, when you don't drink behind somebody where I'm from, they call you scoffle.
Call you what?
I'm gonna say it that way first. Go on, be a scoffle. What? So, scoffle self. Scoffle.
Oh, you uppity?
I'm gonna say it slow. Scoffle. That's how we said it.
Scoffle.
But it was scornful.
Oh,
the word was scornful. But I didn't know it was scornful until I was a senior in high school.
Wow.
Because that's what my and it goes back just to the language.
She validated it. Like,
my mother, see, she know what I'm talking about. My mother stopped school in the 6th grade, got married a year later, and then started a family in 1957. So her language is what became our core, which was what her mom's core was. So there was words and sayings that made perfect sense once you knew what it meant. But until you knew what it meant, you just knew what it meant because mama said it all these years, and cousin said it, and auntie said it. And
well, see, my mom was a teacher, early childhood education. So her job was teaching little children how to read, write, speak. Right. So my mom read stories to us at night before we went to sleep. You know, we had reading time.
My mom turned on Sesame Street.
No, she read books. She read books. And so that's what helped us with our, you know, the articulation piece, the linguistic piece. So, but it just came natural because she was a teacher,
Right.
But she always taught us, when in Rome, if you when you have to put your professional hat on, put it on.
Carbonator.
Do you be who you are, cabin.
Right.
Oh, cabin.
And what I learned from
never heard that.
and what I learned from that, it was the old brand of the refrigerator, the Kelvinator. You remember the Kelvinator refrigerator?
No.
Well, it was one of the first. It was one of the first brands of like Kelvin zero.
I got you.
I got you. I heard people say the Frigidaire, which was a brand and not a refrigerator.
Right. I heard that in the Midwest. Yeah, it was
that was my grandma. She said Frigidaire. He said that's my grandma used to say. I didn't know what a Kelvinator was.
I didn't know. I didn't know an ambulance was an ambulance.
So he said Oscar the Grouch. For me, like I think like with Pastor, the time to, my parents, we lived pretty middle class and my parents worked quite a bit. But for me, it wasn't direct teaching. It just was the environment of how they spoke and how they spoke to me, how they spoke to others. And I just learned to walk a certain way, dress a certain way, present yourself a certain way, because I was never one to want to miss an opportunity. So I know that walking and being a certain way gives you a better chance than, how you were with your boys, so you
that right there. That's the
difference.
Thing.
Yeah.
Right. The vernacular made it made a difference for me. And that's what I meant a minute ago when I was talking about, put your professional hat on, because my mother had 2 languages. She had the language on the phone and she had the language in the house.
Boy, if you don't.
Hi, this is Shirley versus, hello. Right. So what she said is right. She was saying, do you, but know when to be professional. That
must be an England thing. Oh, he said, if you see a car from behind, spells. Police.
Police.
Backwards.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was actually the ambulance. You look at in the rearview mirror, and ambulance was spelled backwards on. That was funny. So I'll never forget in probably 1992. Mm-hmm. I was in Champaign, and I was trying to get an apartment, and my younger brother was sitting in this little spot, and I was talking to the people about the apartment, and I said, yeah, I'd love to see the apartment, 2-bedroom, whatever the case might be, deposit, and I got off the phone, and my brother was like, sell out. I was like, what? Yes, yes, I would love to see the apartment. I guess right. And
they told me that joke.
Yeah, and he teased me because he was the one who, he didn't pay attention to some of the things that my mother was teaching us about, when to turn it on. Right.
He kept it real.
And so because I turned on and used a professional voice, he called me a sellout.
Right. You ain't keeping it real, son.
Right. Because he, when he was growing up, things were beginning to change.
Right.
I had gone off to the military.
Right.
Right. And so the hood became the hood.
Right.
Where I grew up became a hood after I left.
Oh, right. Okay.
The Chicago, the dope boys came down from Chicago and they kind of turned Kankakee out. Crack was on the scene, cocaine, and they were really doing it up. And so a lot of things changed in a very short amount of time.
Wow.
And so he spent some time in that environment. Right. And so when you fast forward to me and being in Champaign, he saw that and I'm like, man, I don't know. I said, man, I'm trying to find me an apartment. What are you talking about? I don't want them to think that they have a hoodlum moving into the apartment.
Right.
And I don't want what people don't realize is when property management companies back then, if they saw you, they gave you the space that matched your personality.
Yep.
There were
Right.
always more. There was always more than one unit available.
Right.
They wouldn't give you the best if you didn't act like you had purpose.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So what I'm saying to him is, man, I want the best of the best, so I have to be the best of the best. And he would say, man, you just a sellout, talking all
Right.
white. I'm like, where did you get that? Like,
Right.
we grew up in the same house. Like, who are you and what did you do with my brother? Right.
And this is the beautiful thing of you being 11, 12 years ahead of me, because what you just said was what growing up black did for me.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in the crack epidemic, like the height of the crack epidemic, same with AD. Like that was every day for us.
Right.
So I understood how to basically what it did, it set me up to go in any environment and be okay. Right. If I went to the hood, I'm good. I could talk the language, I could move the way they move. I did half the stuff that they were doing, but at the same time, if I need to go and talk to somebody about a scholarship, I'm their guy too. And it was like, oh, you
but I did all that too, man. But here's the thing, I was trying to bang when I was in high school. I went through that whole phase, where I thought I was cool. I went to the, I fought. I got in major fights, man. We changed the complexity of the city with fights. But what I'm saying, I think, but the point I'm trying to make is, when I was hanging out with my boys, that's what we did. We was cool. We did that stuff, right? But when it was time to go to work, I put that away.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
No, and that's the same thing I'm saying. I'm saying for us, for my generation, that was the norm.
What I'm saying is, he felt like he never needed to put it away.
Right.
You understand?
Yep.
And that's where the capitalism and being a capital. I'm like, man, I'm trying to get this money.
OG pastor.
Yeah, listen, we come from that, but what I'm saying is, I'm trying to get this money, and so in order, I tell people this: my career in IT, greatest hustle on the planet. Great. You want to talk about hustle? My career, it's the favor of God, but I promise you, greatest hustle on the planet, because I didn't have to go.
And you didn't even you kind of got grandfathered in, or not even grandfathered. I was
grafted in. Some guy saw that I had a brain,
right,
and he taught me. I didn't, like what I do for a living, the money I didn't go to school for this, right. And so what I would tell my brother is, okay, you do that and check in with me in 10 years.
Right.
Let's see where you are, and let's see where I am.
Right.
You understand? And that's what I tell people. You can be cool all day long, but if you're not making any money, if you don't have any benefits, if you're not taking care of your family, you can't get help. There's no health care in the dope game.
Right.
You can't get robbed. Who you telling?
Right.
I'm just saying. So my thing is, you call it being white, and I call it survival.
Right. Definitely.
That's not appealing to them. That is making sure I have a roof over my head. Right. That's what that is. And I think that's where people get it confused. Sometimes, you can be so anti-white that you're anti-black.
Just confused. All kinds of confused.
You understand? Yeah, that's deep. And I'm saying, it's funny. W.E.B. Du Bois has the 4 critical questions that he talks about. And what he's saying is, don't get so angry that you kill yourself.
Right. Yep.
Right. And I'm saying we need to examine what Du Bois was talking about, because a lot of us are, and listen, the problem is the problem. Racism is real. You understand? Right. But you're not going to fix it by just being mad.
Right.
No, absolutely not.
You're not going to gain any ground by just be mad enough to be productive.
Right.
That's what I learned growing up. You'd be mad all day, but if you're not doing anything to affect change, you're just mad. So those were, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, one of the things that I saw that the older generation hated more than anything, which was rap music. Rap music probably was one of the things that pushed me the most, because growing up in the South, all we knew is what was around us, right?
Right.
And then in about 1987, we got cable for the first time. and I saw Yo MTV Raps, and I was introduced to New York hip hop,
Right.
and it changed. It changed the way I saw the world. It changed the way I thought. So I don't completely knock everything that comes out, because for me, hearing a KRS-One, hearing a Rakim, I'm sitting there, I'm like, wow, this is way bigger. And it helped me dream past where I was, because where I was, it was like, it was shock. It was like jumping into a tub of ice water when I first heard that.
Right.
And that's why we probably got a lot of stuff in common right now, AD, because like that era of music,
Right.
it was what spoke to my area of South Carolina the most. Like to this, well, I won't say to this day, but at least 10 years ago, if you was in where I grew up in South Carolina, most of the people, you look at how they dress, they got Tim's on. They got jeans. I mean, they listen to the Nas, they listen to Kiss. We were, even though we was from down south, the Southern culture, it was out for me, at least. I speak for me. It was like a coffin, because it led to dead ends from, I mean, outside of like the Mary McLeod Bethunes, but if you wasn't willing to go that route, there was nothing left for you.
Wow.
So being introduced to that mentality, it let me know that there's more than what's here.
Right.
So even the influence from without changed within.
Right. Give you different perspective. Definitely. Yeah, I think you know, during the 90s, to keep it real, gotta keep it real, son. To keep it real era to you know, don't be selling out, son, you know, and and maintaining who you are everywhere you go, just, you know, and it's still who you are. It's like I'm my relaxed side and I have my professional side, you know, and I think is getting away. He said, ZZ stop, kiss.
That's that English flavor.
Right.
That's the English flavor.
But I think getting away from that saying, and you know, I think sometimes those mental traps, like saying you're talking white or you're living in a white neighborhood, you know, like
word is bond,
just because it's nice is white, you know, white is right. You know, I mean, listen, my dad, unfortunately, he said, find what white people are doing and do that.
Right. But what he was basically saying is, quit playing, go get that money.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, he wasn't saying go be white.
Yeah. He just said, find, you know, whatever they're into, they're obviously chasing something. Right. Yeah. So yeah, it's
like hunting and seeing the dog running over there. There's something over there.
That's the biggest misconception. You know, you want to talk about selling out. You know, you tell somebody, you know, don't do what white people do. It's not about them being white. It's about how to get ahead. Right. You know, and I'm not going to denounce my black trying to get ahead. Right. I'm just trying to get ahead. Right. And I'm not going to kiss anybody's behind trying to get ahead. I'm comfortable in my skin. Right. You know, I'm going to do the things that work, because growing up, I realized there's so many things that's just not your battle. Right. You know, today I want people to understand we have a problem in America. And the problem that we have in America is a problem we've had for a very long time. And it's more prevalent now. Everything has been exposed. You know, these last, you know, the Trump era people don't realize that the Trump era, I was just having a conversation with some coworkers, non-black coworkers. The entire Trump era was straight out of the Hitler playbook. Right. When it comes to hate speech and all that, people don't understand because they don't read. They don't realize that his entire era, his presidency, the campaigning and all that was straight out of Hitler's playbook. If you go look at how Hitler came to power, the propaganda and all of that, Trump, he took it straight out of the Hitler playbook.
He did.
But no one's talking about that.
Nope.
People aren't talking about it. You understand? And now,
I just don't think it's getting traction.
2.0 looks like Hitler 2.0.
Right.
I don't think it got traction because I've on Periscope, I had a couple conversations with some people and did a couple of rooms. And it was out there. It just didn't get traction. It's like people would rather, they're burning this, or they're not seeing you here, or they're taking away jobs here, they're cutting this, or they switch the focus. And what happens is, I think we allow people to change the narrative, and what you just said becomes a conspiracy theory.
Right.
And not that it's a conspiracy, but that's what the masses call it.
Right.
Because
but the thing is, here's the thing: it's a conspiracy theory if it only comes from me. There's
Right.
factual evidence.
Right.
Absolutely.
If people would just do the research, there's
Right.
factual evidence, and that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Biden focusing on minority farmers as part of this $1.9 trillion package, and Lindsey
Right.
Graham deliberately calling it reparations.
Wow.
Right.
So what if you're a white farmer? You don't get anything.
Right.
Y'all been getting it the whole time.
Right.
Now we're trying to put some light, shed some light, and show some attention to some
Right.
minority farmers who
Now-
have not had a break because they can't get into those meetings. They can't get to the table to get access to the funding, but you guys
Right.
can. And
Right.
now Joe Biden is trying to even the playing field by focusing on those that have been forgotten about.
Right.
And you're caught, and he's using the term that's
Reparations. Oh, yeah.
reparations.
Oh yeah. He's
Right.
trying
And
to
the
like
reason it's
further
called
solidify it.
reparations is because he wants to make it a black and white thing.
Right.
And to further your point, that you remember a couple months ago the Eagles former receiver Deshaun Jackson got in trouble for quoting Hitler.
Mm.
He didn't know he was quoting Hitler when he said it,
Right.
but it sounded right. That's why he said it. It didn't sound like I'm duping you or I'm a hateful hate monger. It didn't sound any of that. It sounded like the right thing to say. And if you read a lot of, I say from 1922 to 1932 to 1939 Hitler, if you read a lot of those quotes, you'll sit back and be like, wow, this makes sense. Wow, this is good stuff. And then see said by Hitler, wait a minute, hold on, let me rethink it.
I mean, he shifted the conversation. He brought him in and then shifted the mindset in order to achieve what he was trying to achieve.
Some of the things
I mean,
that he said would
and
sound
it's
like
little
a great
seeds.
minister. It would sound like a great minister talking.
Right. It's the seeds. Oh, Entertainment Nerd, I appreciate you, man. He said, I needed this conversation this morning. Hard to find people who understand. Entertainment Nerd, you're in Twitch. Make sure you follow. I don't know if you can share it out to your people, but make sure you do so as well. We're trying to grow our following here in Twitch land. So appreciate that. Yeah, Richard, you're right. That's called divide and rule. Right. Indeed.
Absolutely.
And that was like the full strategy, because that's where we at. We can't even have a conversation. It's just like so divided. This line has been dug even deeper. The dividing line. It was already, we was constantly fighting during the election process, but this time it just became really, really divided. There at least could be some level of civility having the conversations, but now it's gotten really divided. So I'm hoping some years from now, maybe it'll get back to normal fighting politics as usual, but we'll see.
I'll be glad when we can accept facts, but embrace truth. And what I mean by that is this. It is a fact that redlining exists, or residuals from redlining exist.
Right.
It is a fact that the criminal justice system is biased when it comes to crime and the demographics of who commits certain crime. All of those things are facts.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth of the matter still remains that the only person that can ever stop me from doing anything is me.
Right.
So believe the facts, but don't live in the facts. Live in the truth. The facts, they change, because right now it is that way. Right now, what was today's Wednesday? It's a fact that today is Wednesday. Tomorrow, that's not going to be a fact. But who you are, what you are able to do, that's always going to be truth. But you got to embrace that.
Indeed. All right, my peoples, we appreciate you guys rocking with us. Make sure you join our community. Text brothers to 84576. Text brothers to 84576, and be a part of the community. Big things coming down. Make sure also, if whatever platform you're watching this on, Twitch, YouTube, or Facebook, make sure you share, tag. And I appreciate you guys rocking with us and hanging with us each and every morning, where we have thoughtful conversations just like this. And what does that say? Oh, He said, "Was that time for the resistance from the enlightened, woken people and awareness?" Right? Oh,
Sounds like a term from the movie Divergent.
right.
Yeah, I look.
Right.
It reminded
What
me of
faction
something
are you
Cole
from,
said.
Richard?
It reminded me of something Cole would say. That sounded like it was Chuck D's right there.
Thank you, Mama McCrory. I appreciate you. Thank you for rocking with us. All
Love
right,
you,
so
Mama.
we look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Same place, same channel. It's Thursday. We got some more folk on here. Terry will be here hanging, so anything can happen. See you in the morning. Later. I didn't want to catch
Good
that.
morning,
first.
good morning, good morning, good morning.
Welcome to another.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning.